Hello, it's Nadine, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. And I'm joined today by another guest. And we have with us today Lisa McDonald. Welcome, Lisa.
Now, hello, Nadine. Hello, everyone.
Let me do my quick intro. This is where I talk to the listeners about what I think I know about you as my introduction, and then you can fill in all the gaps, and then we'll get stuck in. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, by the way, even though I don't know a whole bunch about what you do, but I'm super curious because it's something that touches on my own personal experience. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So this is what I've got from stalking you on socials. You are a personal and business coach, and you help your clients create a life that inspires them. Sounds pretty good to me. You're in the process of writing a book. You've got a passion for one particular thing that's quite new, and your book is associated with that, but I'm not going to give anything away with that because all will be revealed. You're a lover of live music. Big concerts specifically, but anything live, I reckon.
Yes.
Yeah, getting out there. You love to travel.
I do.
And you've got one babe.
I do. That's right, Nadine. I think you've pretty well summed it up there. Yeah.
So welcome. Give us the rest. Well, not all of it in one go, but like just give us a bit of let us know who you are, and yeah, we'll get stuck in.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me here today, Nadine. It's really
nice.
Yeah. So I've been coaching for a number of years between business and personal coaching. I always find that it helps people understand a little bit, but what I do is kind of a bit more holistic than that, really, because it's about coaching the individual and finding out what actually inspires them, what's important to them, and how they can create their life out of that. And obviously there's the basic kind of life elements, relationships, health, and all those kind of things. But in order to do that, we also need to finance it, and income generation is the other side of that. So some of my clients have been sort of entrepreneurs, people starting businesses, or just looking for different ways to increase their income. So it really encompasses both of those with doing it. And more recently looking at specialising with women who are at that age or stage where they need to make decisions about having a child or not.
I'm really interested to talk about all of those things. Great. So how long have you been? Welcome. I'm just going to get stuck in with some questions and we'll see where they lead us. How long have you been in the coaching industry? For a long time?
About 20 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you're pretty established.
Yes. So before I had my son, I was fairly well established, and moving back into that is a bit of a different process with writing the book and having my son and COVID and all those kind of things.
Of course.
But I've continued through doing that. I do business coaching for a government program, and that I've continued through the whole time. So.
Cool. I love how you said that it's a more holistic approach, and that you have your, people that are on their personal journey, but often that it's associated with business and finance and life and all of the things. And that's really why I called the podcast Life, Health, and the Universe, because they're all interconnected, aren't they? Like in business, you talk about in life or different things, all the things, get out of your comfort zone, right? In exercise, and it's like it goes across so many of the different things in our life. It's really hard to not find those connections. Do you think?
Absolutely.
I've already started waffling.
Especially, I think, when it comes to personal, because we take ourselves wherever we go. So it doesn't matter your business, doesn't matter what area of life. And sometimes I find that, people separate business and personal, but you're still the same person, particularly if you're working in service industries, where you are your business with doing that. But
do you Do you find it difficult to get people to separate those things? Like, is it a bit of an untangling of stuff when you have someone come to you?
Well, I figured with somebody's working on more business related goals, most of the clients that I work with are working on that self aspect of themselves anyway. And so most of those people would understand that in order to grow your business, you've got to grow a part of yourself anyway.
Mm.
And understanding what drives and motivates us actually helps us to create success in every area of our life, including business. So even if I'm just talking with someone who's in a startup in a business, it's what actually motivates them, because how do you work with people on strategy if you actually don't know what drives them? Because you've got to try and align what the strategy is to the person. So that's part of what I'd love to do with coaching clients and that, because it's, well, what makes you tick, and how do we leverage off that to create a life that really inspires you?
Yeah, and again, that's something that is connected with what I do, and it's working with people and health, but getting an idea of what is it that you actually want to get out of this, and what are the best ways for you to do it, because your way is not necessarily going to be the same way as the next person. So yeah, it's again,
Absolutely.
there's
and
that,
it's the habits that support that. So when you know what you're trying to create, it also helps you understand what are the habits you need to put in place to create from that place as well.
Yeah, totally. Now, I've had a look at your website very briefly, and I'm not going to go into the book or anything yet. I'm going to save that bit. There's just some things that you talk to with people. So I'd love to know, like, firstly, what types of people do you attract? Is it people at different points in their life where they do feel like they're at a crossroads? You talk about building confidence, becoming your authentic self, and growing someone's ability to succeed. So yeah, I'd love to know, like, I've asked you about 7 questions all in one go. Let's start with the type of person.
Well, I think the type of person is typically someone who is focused on achieving goals.
Male, female, mixture.
It used to be quite balanced, but now, and particularly in relation to talking about some of the having children sort of thing, it tends to be more women focused, and for that particular market too. That's something I can speak into. I can't speak into being a male.
Do you feel like the women who do come to you, obviously they're at a turning point in their lives because they might be making a decision about becoming a mother or having a second or third child, but is that generally when people seek out a coach, a life coach, is when they're at that crossroads?
I think so, or they want to create a goal that they haven't achieved yet. So what's holding them back from doing it? They might be stuck personally. So typically I've attracted people who are on that personal growth journey as well. So for most, it's not a new concept to think about the fact that you've got a mindset blocks and internal dialogue and your own history and things like that. Which is one of the things that I work with people on, is clearing some of that baggage so that you can achieve results. But pretty much I've done that out of the focus lens of achieving a goal, because we could spend all day long, couldn't we, working on refining little bits of pieces of who we are. But I find that goals, or having a vision for what you want, actually helps you to narrow down really what actually do I want to work on refining. I mean, there's a lot of judgment based in that anyway, but it's where do you want to master, what do you want to master in your life, and creating out of that place, and again creating the frameworks and foundations for creating the results. So
what sort of so you've mentioned being helping people be their authentic self. Is that something that is a barrier, like when you say that there's something holding them back, or they just can't quite get to the next stage? is part of it because they're not being their authentic self? They're trying to live in the expectations of someone else?
Yes, look, I think sometimes there is an element that goes on because we all grow up with conditioning. And when we're trying to get that to that next level of things, there's reasons why we haven't achieved that. Sometimes it's because we haven't had the experience. We might not have had the role models who can do that, but they shape our ability to how we think and feel. How we think affects how we feel, and how we feel affects the actions that we take in relation to that. So working through that in a dialogue and helping to clear some of those things can help people to create results with work. And sorry, I just lost the gist.
That's okay. I think I was asking about authentic self.
Yeah, being authentic. So I guess it in some ways we're always being authentic because it's always a part of who we are. And even if we're being a bit of a chameleon or accepting barriers, that's still part of who we are.
Okay.
But evolving in a more conscious way that enables us to live in the way that we would like to be and to grow into that, because we have to evolve a bit into that. And so that as we become more conscious of where we want to create shifts and living into other people's expectations, it's kind of part of our conditioning. Some of that we might be aware of, and some less so. So obviously, if you're outside of that, it's quite often easier to see that than it is to see it for yourself. So in working with a coach, obviously that person can help you to see where some of the blind spots are.
Yeah, right. Do you feel like you have to do a fair bit of digging around? Or to you, is it just like, I can see it. I can see exactly what's going on here.
I think some things are really obvious.
But not always to the person you're working with.
No.
Right.
And I think as well is that sometimes the digging around comes around because you're looking at what's the big thing here that if you dig down, obviously, if you work on the foundational, where's the foundational issue? We build on top of those experiences and things that we have. So if we can identify, like the root cause often is the word that people use, identifying the root cause, then when you shift that aspect of it or you refine it, that it ripples through to a lot of other things that you're trying to do. So
how easy is that? Or how hard is that? Or is it all person dependent?
I guess it's all of those things at times. The more you do it, you pick those things up faster, as you would know with things that you're doing. So you can finger on things easier. You develop your intuitive skills as well.
Yeah.
And then some of that is the person dependent, because some people are operating a lot out of their mental construct and not necessarily connecting with the deeper sense of who they are. Some people get very tied up in their emotions. So it's wading through where that particular person sits with it. Where are they living out of? And that's something, I guess, over the years that I've navigated fairly well with people. I can shift between if you like, the spiritual, the mental, the physical. So I'm a bit of a chameleon. I kind of work around with where that particular person's at. Yeah.
I get that. I think so. Something that I've been personally experiencing recently, and life is a journey, right? And I'm sure you would agree that, like, we're always learning new things about ourselves as at different times in our lives. And
absolutely.
One thing that I've been more conscious of is all of that subconscious stuff. And like I've been reading more about it, and I've been practicing meditation and sort of going down those kind of rabbit holes, I guess. They're very similar in association with habit, forming habits and what we do, naturally, I guess you'd say. But like getting down into the subconscious, it can really that's really the root of whether someone can make changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also that voice of, you know, I want to do it. All right, I'm focused. I'm gonna do it. And then there's that other voice that says you can't do it.
But
Yeah,
90% of how we operate is actually out of our subconscious
subconscious.
mind, and only 10% conscious. So
Mm.
that's a lot of conditioning. And, and part of that works for us because in developing habits, it helps us make life easier. But sometimes
Exactly.
shortcuts, and then we forget we've learned that thing. It just becomes automatic, and it's until we're interruption in our life, which comes in different forms, which can, or a crossroad or something like that, where we have to stop and think, oh, why is that happening? Or, you know, like sometimes with exercise, people coming along to you, you know, because they want to learn what are the things that I can do. And so sometimes that's reminding people of things they used to do. Sometimes it's giving them new ideas about what they need to do. So it's a journey.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's as you said, the habits they are good because they free up space for us to be able to do other things, like if we've got things in our routine and so on. But sometimes those subconscious thoughts and behaviors that go a little bit deeper than your normal everyday habits, like, you know, making sure you drink water and go to bed at a certain time and, you know, clean your teeth, those subconscious thoughts, yeah, they've been going on for a lot longer than some of our general everyday life behaviors and habits. So they can take a little bit of it can take a little bit of cracking the nut, can't it, to get in there and find out what's going on.
We think also about the mind just being I guess like, you know, head thing, but it's actually a physiological thing as well, because when our habits affect our physiology, because there's chemical reactions when we do things. So we have the feel good hormones or the not ones, and they're there. So when we change our habits, our chemistry is actually going, hang on a minute, I'm used to that thing. I like that thing. It helps me, even if it's uncomfortable, things that we perceive as uncomfortable. It's still a strategy. We've implemented that strategy at some point to support us in our life. You know, whether it's a protective mechanism or something like that. But as soon as we start to change our habits, that old physiological chemistry, as well as our brain works, is actually kind of going, because it's like a barometer where you're programmed to be this, and then if you deviate much from it, your system's just going, what's going on? What's going on? I like this, I don't like this.
It's amazing, isn't it? And like so that your thoughts create emotions, and then your emotions release the chemistry, and it makes you feel a certain way. So we become very familiar with that, as you said. But it also goes like that step further into our physical body, where we actually move towards doing a behavior before we're even, you know, we might, and it's like, oh, look, for example, reaching for your phone. It just becomes this automatic thing, and in your conscious, you're kind of going, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be looking at the phone, and before you know it, you're on the phone. And then you're like, my body just did that without me actually telling it to. Yeah, it's pretty full on. Do you use what techniques do you use to help people work through some of that stuff? Or is it quite, are you quite sort of, it doesn't sound like you're very matter of fact, and that you said that you kind of you can go spiritual or you know, more.
I like to I guess there's different elements to what I'm doing. So there's the information gathering and those kind of things. There's creating the structures and frameworks, and then there's the application of that, just taking the actions, which is I try to look for really practical things when it comes to those kind of things. In terms of supporting people through NLP is one thing that I've used recently, but I think it's a frame too, because it's through my NLP training, it's a listening for where a person's at. You know, are they in their emotions? Are they in their thinking space? And it's reframing, you know, like using language and them to reframe, and you're practicing that with them. And so it was like, after a bit, when people start to, where you can just look at them and they go, oh, I said that thing, or I've done that thing. So, because they kind of self-reflect at that point. So it's training them into new ways of thinking. So they're obviously very practical ways of doing things. And then where are the habits that they need to implement? The clearing out the subconscious work. So I've used a bit of NLP. I use a process called the equilibration process, which works on working on people's stories and helping to reframe the story in a way that releases that old emotion. So therefore, it's not driving their behaviour, because emotion, as we said before, drives behaviour. It either moves you towards something or it takes you away from it. Whereas when you're in that neutral spot, that's real true, where true choice point is, really, because you're not emotionally attached to the outcome. So it's like, well, what in my heart, what in my spirit, where do I feel inspired to move?
Do you use meditation at all, or not really?
Yes, I do use a bit of meditation. Yeah. One of the great things about meditation is that it quietens the mind and it grounds the body. So again, as they clear those, as they quieten all of that, it makes it a much easier space to reflect and to quieten the mind down, because also as well, that's where we get to see where we're reacting. So we can sit with an idea and feel into that. How do I feel? Because women, we're all very busy, not just women, but busy.
Yeah, women are the busiest.
So we can sort of disconnect with some of how we feel sometimes as well, because we get into these routines, we're doing all these different things. So to come back into a space where we're like really grounded, and to be able to, because that's also a great space to be able to work through problems too, because you're in a calm space rather than a fight or flight. We go up into our brains as a defense mechanism because we don't feel in our brains.
Sure.
Okay. When we ground ourselves into our bodies, because that's where our emotions are stored, in our bodies. And as we work into the emotions, we can actually clear some of those stories again that are driving our behaviour. So.
Yeah. Do you get much resistance from people when you talk about some of those things? Or not really?
Within the work, no.
Okay.
Early days, if I was working with people who hadn't done any personal development, generally I would work first out of the goal side of it first, because that's an easier construct sometimes for people to work with, particularly with men, and then lead them into that to show them how working on that particular issue can help them to move forward. Whereas people who've done some sort of personal growth work or are a bit more self-aware with some of those issues, you don't necessarily have to. You can jump into the point at which is the bigger priority. But you generally still work with them. Well, what's your outcome? What are you looking to achieve? What's your big picture vision?
Yeah. And I'm just going to go right back and ask, how did you start in this work? You've been doing it for a long time, and I don't think that life coaches were necessarily a thing much,
No, they were
back in the day. So how did you get into it? Like, what's your background in terms of, did you study this at uni or?
No. I've typically been very physically active, played a lot of sport and done a lot of outdoor things. I worked in the early days more in administration, but I never thought, I'd be working in an office of that initially, but that is where I ended up doing. But I was setting up systems and foundational things, and I was fairly autonomous in the roles that I was doing. And then I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for a period of time and that too. So, you learn different things from being in a different organisation. I then sort of moved over into, I worked with a chiropractor, but I was very much interested in health and wellbeing. I had thoughts that I might study naturopathy at one point, but very interested in self-mastery and health and wellbeing. So I used to read lots and lots about all of that. So when I first established the coaching business. Health Pursuit was the business name that I was using, because I looked at it from the point of view of, excuse me, health in every area of your life. But what I had to realise more, that the bigger issue wasn't so much the physical, it was the underlying issues that people had. So I think you've got those pillars of, and I also in my own life went through, I had a marriage breakup, which kind of shook things up quite a bit. And not long after that, though, I got involved in personal development. So I did this lots and lots of things in personal development. So you've got that personal growth, as well as health and well-being, and then the other areas of life that come into that. And I was very interested in business and wealth creation. So those things naturally, when you kind of pull them all together, just come in naturally into that space. And I continued with those things. And, you know, health has always been a passion of mine. So it's very much speaking holistically with people and seeing how they can support themselves through those kind of practices is very much a part of where I come from, the mind, body, spirit.
Yeah, great. You talked about self-mastery of your own, like in your research and studies and that sort of thing. Have you got any standouts? So they're like people that you were like reading and you're like,
Tony Robbins, was it?
Tony Robbins, yeah.
Yes. John DeMartini.
Yep.
DeMartini.
He does a bit of behavioral stuff, doesn't he, DeMartini?
Yeah, he wears lots of different hats. He's a huge research. He's an incredible man. Yeah, he's read so much. But he's, yeah, I think he describes himself as a human behaviour specialist. There's one of the titles that he uses with that, and he works that at every different level, really. But you know, he was the one, he created the breakthrough DMRT breakthrough method.
Okay.
Which the equilibration process that I used was used by a student of DeMartini's with that process. So a bit different to how DeMartini does his, but an offshoot of that. So yeah, very, very interesting, and very, listening to his things, because he's very much able to do, his process very much takes people through the intellect and the other side of things to integrate.
Yeah, cool. So they're your two standouts, Tony Robbins and DeMartini. Cool. You talked about wealth creation. Look, I know we're going to get onto another topic and we need some time for it because it's the big one, but I'm curious about wealth creation. Any standouts in that area, and anything in particular that you do or specialize in? Because, you know, you hear about there are some more sort of spiritual practices around wealth creation, right? And some would say that it's to do with our money blocks, and that sort of thing is to do with like emotional attachment, or the things that have happened to us in our childhood, and the way that people have talked about money, or how we feel about whether we're worthy of receiving, right? There's all of those things. Is that the take you have on it?
Well, yes.
Or is it just like earn money, save money? Now you're wealthy.
Because I think it still comes back to those same pillars. It's about what's your vision for your life, and we all need funds to create and live in the world. We've gone past the caveman times where they didn't use money or anything like that. Money's been used as a form of exchange for a long time now. And in order to get food and clothes and all those kind of things, some people are clever enough to make some of those things or grow them. But with the world we live in, even the clothes, we can't possibly create every single thing that we consume in our lives. So, right, we're going to pay for the benefit of those creations, for their roads to be created and all that kind of stuff. So money is an energy. It's a form of energy. So if we want to increase our finances, then part of that is looking at it, the psychology that we have around money. What's our vision? What do we want it for? What habits do we need to put in place in order to grow our wealth? But also, okay, so what is the wealth inside you you can capitalize on to make income earning easier? So some people do that through a business, but some people do that through a job, right? You don't have to earn all your money through a business. So some of that's a personal preference thing. Obviously there's different benefits to being in a business. Your tax is based on your after cost. So, which is different to being in a job. You don't have all the constraints of having to market and all those other type of things. But so it's coming back to the individual and what's the vision and how can you increase your income based on that.
Okay, cool.
Right? And again, what are the blocks that are stopping a person from doing as they grow, as they work towards their goals? Where are the stumbling blocks? And those blocks are always going to be conditioning based. So we need to recondition, which is why you personal trainers and coaches and things to help.
Yes. Recondition the body, recondition the mind, recondition the spirit. All right. So I've been hanging out for this bit. I was going to talk to you more about your own personal journey with, your self-mastery and that sort of thing. But let's get to your personal journey with one big thing that you've done in your life not that long ago, right?
Correct.
And I'm still not saying it. And that's having a child. And you are now in the process of writing a book to help other women make a decision around what do we call it?
Whether to have a child. Well, basically, it's whether to have a child.
What is it? The baby thing. But what do you, baby or no? Do you just call it baby or no baby?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're just finalising time at the moment, but it's the whole baby thing was a phrase that
the whole baby thing. Yeah,
I found it's a bit of a throwaway phrase, talking about that sort of thing, because I found myself at times going through that journey is that sometimes that can be sensitive type thing.
Absolutely.
What's going on. And it was kind of a bit of a throwaway line, the whole baby thing, because it's kind of wraps it all up and kind of in a way desensitizes it a little bit or removes it a little bit. So I found myself using that phrase a bit, and when it came to writing the book, it seemed natural to do that. And the book explores the question about whether to have a child or not. So
cool.
A lot of
people... take us. So sorry. Do you want to go or do you want me to go? I was just going to ask you to take us back to your own personal journey, because I feel like I've read somewhere that you're a late starter, a late bloomer when it came to making babies. Yes. So was I. So what happened in your, what's your story around that? And obviously there was a decision-making process. This has inspired your experience has inspired the book. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that in my late 20s, I was in a relationship that I thought was, I was going to meet the man and have a family one day. I wasn't in any hurry to do either of those things, but, I was expected that that's what I was going to do when I met the guy who I married, and that went pear-shaped fairly quickly. And that was fine. I thought, right, that's fine. I've still got plenty of time to do all those things. So I kept following my interests and things that I was wanting to do, my other goals. And then, as the years marched by and into my late 30s, I was still no closer to all that happening. I was single, and at that time I didn't really think that I would go it alone with doing that. But I still had a really strong belief that it was possible. I didn't buy into all the media hype that, once you hit 35, that, it was going to be really hard. So that came from, I guess, my background in coaching and personal growth work, and that is that, you know, what you believe is absolutely going to
becomes your reality. Yeah.
And because I'd had a passion in health and wellness and very much implementing those kind of philosophies and behaviours and actions and habits and that into my life, that was going to put me in good stead so that I would be able to have a child if it came to that. So eventually did meet my husband, but of course by that stage I was almost 41 when I met him.
Did you manifest him?
Yes, but also the part of that was, you know, being really clear about what I wanted, and having the courage to, you know, frame that when I was meeting people, that kind of stuff. Because well, while it was an option, it was very much going to be part of my filtering process. And if it got to the stage where I was past that, you know, it just would be just a different perspective with doing. But
sure.
The option was open. So yes, eventually, you know, I manifested him, and then eventually we start trying to conceive, and then you've got age on your side, so that was difficult to consume. So you got that month after month where things aren't happening. So some people find they get pregnant but they don't keep it. So, but for us, we didn't for a very long time, and then we're successful, but I miscarried at 10 weeks. So meanwhile, time's marching on, and it was only at that point where I was open to having conversation about assisted fertility, and, you know, assisted things. So before that, I thought, no, I'd give up before it got to that stage. It was very much about doing things the natural way. But that opened up the doorway. So that was the positive that came out of having the miscarriage, that I was able to just open up to that conversation, which started a new journey. So I think all of those different things created crossroads. I was in my 30s. I was doing bodybuilding competition. And my period stopped. And I didn't have period for about 9 months. The naturopath who I'd worked at said, don't worry, because your body fat's so low, once you put some of that back on, your cycle should be fine. Which that's what happened the first time. After I'd competed for a while, and then went back to it, like my periods disappeared almost straight away. And I went and saw a different naturopath at that time. She said, Lacey, you know, if you want to have kids, this potentially could kick you into early menopause. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, she said, because your body thinks it doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did stop at that time, and then fast forward to meeting my husband at that. So it was lots of different crossroads, because you can kind of go, well, it doesn't matter. Or how important is it?
Yeah, totally.
Crossroads. And even when you're going through the journey of trying to conceive and it not working, you've got those crossroads that keep coming up, because it's, do I persist? So
yeah, totally.
I believe in choice, and I know that that's something that's important to you. Is choice is figuring out what's important, but doing the inner work to quieten the waters so that you can proceed with wherever you're going to go, that you're going to reassess at lots of different times where to.
Yeah.
Is it to keep going, or is it time just to close the door? Because eventually every woman must close the door. And of course, more women than ever now are choosing not to have children. So it becomes, I think, a much more conscious question about which road do I want to follow. So some women, right from an early age, I don't want kids, never did, never will. That never changes for some people. But at the other end of the spectrum, yes, you've got all sorts of different options, one of which is using assisted reproductive technology. And in the end, that's where we went.
Like IVF?
IVF and down the donor conception.
Oh, did you?
So there we had my son I was 47 and a half when I had my son. So
go you.
Yeah, so he was only one of 500 babies born to that women that age, that year. So in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can see not many people. I think in the last, even since he was born, that whole field of fertility, lots more women are talking about not having children. lots more women are, IVF is much more mainstream. Donor conception is much more mainstream. So the whole world's just changed a lot. So lots of this, and women, each woman's really got to work through their own process. And I'm saying woman because there may or may not be a partner involved, but ultimately it's the woman's body, so she must choose, even if she's got a partner.
Yeah, wow. Did you get a donor egg and then you carried the baby?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. And when you learn about a couple of things, one being epigenetics, and that's how the environment influences the embryo, because when embryo is put into the womb, it's really amazing because that embryo actually is interpreting the environment that it's growing up in. So it can switch genes off and on just by being in that environment. There's another concept, fetal chimerism, too. It's the exchange of DNA between the embryo or the growing child and the mother. So it's and again, those things influence the biology of the child.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool. I've got a very similar, well, I didn't have a donor egg, but I was 40. Was I 40? I was 40 when I had Louis, but I was a competitive CrossFitter and was training a lot. And I didn't even realize. I was like, I'm getting my periods, I'm fit and healthy, there's nothing wrong with me, but I couldn't conceive, and it was the same thing every month. But I also was like, I didn't get together with my now husband until I was 35 or 36, and I was like, well, I don't know if I even want kids. Like, the world's a pretty messed up place. I don't know if I want to bring another human into it. Now I have a different perspective on that. But yeah, it was like the time started ticking. Yeah. And maybe if we're going to think about it, then we need to think about it soon. Couldn't conceive naturally, had all the tests and there was nothing wrong, but we couldn't conceive. And now in hindsight, I totally put that down to, like, I was exercising and so everything seemed okay and all the blood tests came back all right and all that sort of thing. But clearly all of the stuff I was doing, my body was like, there ain't no energy left to grow a child. Like, your body is doing other things. We had IVF. We went, and it was pretty simple because it was just unexplained infertility. So there was in there, the books of all of the things that you tick and cross off, there was nothing that they could figure out. So that we did one cycle. They put the embryo in and it didn't take, and they had one more embryo frozen, and they put that in with the natural cycle, the following cycle, and it took. And that's Louis. So we were pretty fortunate, but we had the and as I'm sure you experienced as well, it's like you've done the work and you emotionally you're like, well, if we're going to do this, we have to assume it's going to work. Otherwise, what's the point? If you go into it assuming that it's just not going to work, then it probably ain't going to work. So you have to go in assuming that it's going to work. All right. So there you go. There's my little story. Same, bit different.
You're going through that, whether it works, when it doesn't work. And some women...
Yeah. And like you say, there's that crossroads. And every month before you go through that process, it's like, maybe I am. Oh, I'm not. Maybe I am. Oh, I'm not. And it's like this excitement. And then it's like, don't know what it's like anyway. So maybe I'll just be okay. But and it's a completely different experience for everyone, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
depending on how strong your desire is. And yeah.
So I think, look, part of this blessing, I believe there's blessings in everything. We don't always get the outcomes that we want with things, but ultimately, though, we still have a choice how we handle that. So at each point, we just need to stop and regroup and figure out what that next step is, and because it's what we do have control of, but also sometimes steadying the waters inside, clearing what we need to actually enables us to move forward, whichever direction that's going to be. So, and with my background, that's part of what I did, because I would do the processes to get to that point so that I was clear that I would have a good life either way. And I think that's the most powerful way to move forward, because that way, whatever the result is. And I think as time went on, that got more so. Early in the piece, I think I was more, it was hard because, I was attached to this idea of having a child, and conditioning was, I'm one of 5, so my conditioning was always very much, family, 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 who am I? I guess sometimes questioning self-worth. I think there's less of that now, but there's still plenty of that now,
Did your siblings all have kids?
I've got 3 older brothers, and they all had kids, and my sister didn't meet her partner till later in life, so she didn't end up. So in the book, I talk about a lot of those different issues, from wanting to women choosing not to have children, right through to women choosing to have them. So I talk about the concepts. I've got statistics sort of say that people recognise that they fall within those. They're not alone. There's lots of people who've gone through those different things. I share my own story and journey in there, because I think it's very much a journey for a lot of women. And I also share the stories from a bunch of women that I interviewed that are across the spectrum as well. And my sister was one of the ones who shared her story in there too, which was really interesting perspective to get, because early in the piece we had some discussions about it, but not further on. So so she didn't have kids. She's got 2 stepchildren, and my brothers had kids too. So we'd very much grown up in a big family, and that was, you used to, I think the more the years go by now, women have different conditioning about what their options and things are and where they might be. And there's less, it doesn't mean there's not, but there's less emphasis or framing of women as just as mothers. There's much more. My mum, when she had my oldest brother, didn't work since then, so she was home duties mum.
Right.
So that was kind of the model that I grew up with. That wasn't one I aspired to. Very much wanted to have more than that in my life. But we live in a very different world, and we have to keep adapting to the world that we're in. But one of the beauties and the curses of the modern times is there's lots of freedom to choose to, and the whole thing, as I call it, there can be lots of choices in there. That can even be confusing for some people, because well, which way do I go? Am I going to have regrets if I do? I'm going to have regrets if I don't. And I think it's really important to, as much as possible, to work through some of those things before you buy opportunity to do it, because as we've talked about, fertile window continues to shrink. It's still possible. The oldest woman to have a child naturally, in the Guinness Book of Records, was 59.
Was she carrying someone else's embryo? No, she conceived.
They call that verified. So basically, she did conceive. So
wow, it's
unusual.
Kicking on.
Typical age of menopause is around 51, 52. So for the average person, so lots of people go through menopause much earlier than that, some later. But it's a long fertile window that most women have. So lots of room for changing minds and as well. So some people don't like to hear that, of course, but So with the book is written, and it's now with the publishers, so they're doing the cover and
Oh, that's exciting.
that side of it. So yes, exciting. So for launching next year. But the editor was a lady who, when I started working with her, was adamant she wasn't going to have kids. During the process,
She's read the book and now she wants
her
one.
editing the book, she changed her mind. So she actually wrote a testimonial for me, which was pretty awesome.
Is that kind of like, all right, so now you've got a child. Do you just want other people to have babies because it's so good? Or do you try not to get involved in that? Because your book, if the editor like changed their mind about it, like it sounds like there might be a bias towards
because
one.
When she started, that was the interesting thing, because she had an alternate perspective. So when she was going through and editing, she'd pick out certain things and kind of go, that I might not have seen myself as somebody who'd been through it. And so when I was talking to her one day about the editing and about that, she said, "Oh, actually, we've changed our mind about that." I sensed from some of the conversation that she was questioning some of it. But it wasn't my place at that time to engage in that conversation. It's different when you're in a client relationship, because it gives you permission to ask things in a different way. But anyway, yes, so she said yes, that they'd changed their mind and that she was actually
Pregnant.
changed her mind at some point. No, I don't think she was pregnant. No, she wasn't pregnant initially, but they'd changed their mind on it. But since then, she must be about 5 or 6 months, I think. Like that. But anyway, so I said, "Oh, so did the book get you thinking a little bit?" And she goes, yes, I blame that book. So when I finished it all, I said, "Would you mind writing a testimonial?" So in her words, it wasn't that reading the book changed her mind, but in questioning, going through the questioning herself, is that the principles in the book reinforced for her need to come to her own answers. And so it helped her journey. It didn't change her mind, which obviously it's important for people to think, because it's not about changing people's mind. It's about just at any point in time, because sometimes there's multiple times over your life, or over your fertile life, where that might be reconsidered, and that too. So I think women should do whatever it is that they feel right, and in our society we should support women whichever end of the spectrum that they choose on, or for women who've not chosen, their circumstances have prevented them having a child, that's supporting them in how to create their lives in a way that's still fulfilling for everybody. I think that's really important for women who are unsure because they're getting a bit older.
We say go for it.
We say go for it. Go for it if that's what you want. If it's what you want. I was talking to my cousin last year, and she used to be a midwife, and she told me a story about someone who she came across who pursued having kids, was older, went through IVF and everything, and then she ended up getting pregnant, and then she decided that she was past it, and she ended up having a termination. So it's,
oh my,
people can find them in all sorts of different situations. So again, the clearer people are in their perspective, and that's not just it's not just a mental thing, it's just getting that clarity, and for women not to feel like that their life is only shaped by whether they do or don't have kids.
You so your book is being in the publishers right now, due for release into 2023.
Yes.
Have you got a date?
End of February, early March. So by the end of March, it will be out there.
Cool. And what are your aspirations with the book? Like, are you already working with women in this more specific area of your coaching, or do you aspire to, or you just read the book?
I've touched on that base sometimes with some clients. Some clients I've worked specifically on that with them, but I'm aspiring to do a lot more work in this area. It's a big area, and there's not that many people really working in this particular space. There's counsellors, a counsellor, and there's place for all of that. But one of the women that I interviewed who had struggled to conceive, she ended up working with a life coach, and what she reinforced was that in working with the counsellors tend to be more about the past, and
trying to process experiences and that sort of thing, and come to terms with.
She was very much a very achievement orientated person too.
Okay.
So creating a really strong picture of a future beyond that was really, really helpful for her. And so as a coach, that's what I'd love to bring to more people, to be able to work through that and take a picture of their life with or without a child. That, because to me, ultimately, that crosses all those other borders with doing it. For people who want extra help, I'd love to work with women who want to have a mentor or coach that can take them, walk alongside them, because a lot of people haven't been through those things. I went through a lot in the time through. So insights, having discussions with people. Well, these are some things that you can be talking to a doctor about. I used a lot of complementary therapies and things like that.
Yeah, same.
What my background was, and helping people to work through some of those issues. And women who just want to read, or they want to support somebody who's going through that, there's lots in it. End up being much bigger than what I originally anticipated. But I wanted to talk about the concepts. I wanted to have the stories in there of women who've been through it and out the other side, and who've living lives that they're happy and fulfilled with, right from that spectrum, from no kids, never wanted them, and right through to women having kids that with advanced reproductive assistance and a few different in the middle and that. So
wow.
I think that will help a lot of women who are even just working through to identify.
I want to read it anyway, and I don't want any kids. I don't want any more kids.
Enough.
I got two. I had one after Louis who was natural. Yeah. So I got one and one.
Well, that can happen too, because
that can happen.
Hormones and everything else just kind of and also because you're not thinking about it. It just because when you stress, it raises their cortisol levels, and cortisol levels can
it's not a good place to make a baby. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I want to read the book. I'm gonna get it.
And writing the book's been like having another baby, I have to say.
Yeah, I bet. And I don't know, it's pretty tough to write a book while you've got a kid. How old is your little one?
So he'll be 7. He's born 2 days before Christmas, so almost 7. So he's looking forward to his birthday. But of course, part of that process will happen through COVID. So you're homeschooling and juggling all those hats, as many people were, and many mums were.
Yeah, well done. Go you.
And I think when you're really clear, so I'm so grateful to have my son, and I'm very clear about my priorities in that respect. So when you have to make decisions, best to make the decisions based on your highest priorities rather than lesser ones, because you're going to maximize that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got there anyway. The book's at the publishers. How exciting. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lisa, we've reached an hour, and I reckon that we could carry on going, but I appreciate that time is precious, and that we've got other stuff going on as well. So I'm gonna unless you have any other closing remarks to share? I think you've given us some really insightful
I think just, you know, for
stuff to go.
a life that you go out and create a life that inspires you, no matter what that is and no matter what your age.
Yeah, great. Love
Go
it.
forward and conquer.
Yay.
Or adjust, you know, if you can't conquer the mountain, you know, conquer the hill.
Yeah, damn straight. Or the bump in the road.
Yes, exactly. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I love it.
enjoy your life.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful. We're going to share some details about your book, your upcoming book, in the notes, and any other links, website and whatnot too, so people can find you if they want to find out more. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Nadine.
Yeah, good luck with the book release.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.